Hey Rose, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Hossam?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on my show. And let's dive in. How about you tell me a little bit about your journey? I know some stories about you and your family, your father, and there was this very tragic event. If you don't mind, I would love to hear. And also, I think it will be so inspiring and moving for the audience as well.
Yeah, so my journey started back in 2015 when I was dropping my daughter off at school and I was driving to the gym and I kept on thinking about what is my purpose in life? Like why am I here? Why do I feel so different? I had all these questions but nothing really came to me. So this particular day I was driving to the gym, I was like why do I feel so different? Like why am I here? Then this voice was like, forgive that man that killed your father. And that I haven't thought about this man that killed my father since I was like, I don't know. I just didn't think about him.
Yeah.
So my father was shot and killed in July 7th, 1990 in San Jose, California. He owned a Cambodian video store back when, we had VHS. You go to like Blockbusters and you'll get,
Mm,
all the Asian movies like on tape. Um,
yeah.
so a group of Cambodian gang members, the youngest was 16 years old. The oldest was 21 and
Yeah.
there were six of them, all in between that ages. They thought that they were going to first. They went to go scope out my dad's video store and was checking it out, and he was by himself. And they're like, "Oh, it's a easy rob. Let's
Mm,
go there." So my father was shot and killed at his video store, and that was devastating for the whole family.
of course.
Um, I didn't know what death was.
How old were
I
you?
didn't. I was 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. All I knew was that hearing the news uh, back home, because we're at home. Actually, that time we lived with my grandma and grandpa like an hour and a half away from
Mm,
where my parents were living at the time. I just remember that day when we got the news that my father was shot and killed. The whole neighborhood, because we live in a Cambodian community,
mm,
so you could hear the neighbor across the street yelling out to the whole neighborhood, "Puchon, ke ban ngo pai,"
mm,
shouting like, "Oh, my dad's was shot and killed."
yeah.
And I just remember everything just went silent and went dark. I remember being in the house with my grandparents, my brother, total silence.
Mm,
We didn't know what was going on.
right.
I just remember it was dark and cold
Yeah.
hearing that news. And so growing up and losing your father at 7 years old, I didn't think anything of it. I thought my childhood was normal.
Right.
So growing up, we kind of just dismissed it like, oh, we never really talked about it.
Right. It's like a coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, oh, he was shot and killed. And kind of that was it.
Mm,
But what I seen was my mother grieving, just hysterical.
mm,
And for me, as a 7 year old, my parents didn't think of anything like, oh, you know, because I believe we all grieve differently.
interesting.
We all grieve differently. There's no right or wrong way of grief. You and my brothers, we all grieve differently. And there's
Okay.
no wrong or right way. Is how you grieve is the right way for you.
Yeah. So, what are ways of grieving?
Ways are grieving is they have the 6 stages of grief,
Yeah.
which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and the last one is finding meaning in loss.
Mm. Denial, anger, bargaining,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
what's the fourth one?
depression,
Okay.
and then acceptance.
Acceptance,
Hmm.
and then finding meaning with the loss.
Yeah, finding meaning after loss. Yeah,
Wow. What is
yeah.
bargaining?
Bargaining is like when you question yourself, like if I do everything, then I won't be, hurt as much.
Mm.
It's kind of like you're trying to like bypass the
Yeah,
bargaining, like,
yeah.
only if this happened, only if that, or like, you're trying to like gain control in this moment so you won't be hurt later.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of thoughts like are it's like you're bargaining with your thoughts.
Right, right. Instead of kind of like being in the emotion, you're
Yeah.
stuck in the head
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
If I do this right, then this won't like you're preventing yourself from feeling,
Right, right.
yeah, from hurting more.
Right. That is powerful. Okay, well, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think that was a good segue. So, you were just for you, it was normal. Things were normal, and your mother was grieving.
Yeah. I could see her just crying and just like, she was in the thick of it. And for me is seeing her being supported by the friends, her friends, our friends and family.
Mm,
But how about like the younger kids of grieving? At that time, my parents, they came from the Khmer Rouge, which they came from a war-torn country
yeah.
to America. So they seen death, lots of death. But how do we think about like a young person grieving? For me, at 7 years old, how I dealt with grief was that I went into my parents' room.
Yeah.
I closed the door and I remember smelling my dad's pillow, smelling his essence,
Mm,
crying by myself in the room.
yeah.
And then I remember coming out, wiping my tears at 7 years old, walking to another room, people grieving.
Mm,
So sometimes with grief, a lot of people grieve alone.
yeah.
And there's no wrong or right way, So, whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so growing up, I had no idea that I had like this was trauma, you know?
Mm,
I had no idea. I grew up, I was like, oh, I had a you know, a great childhood. Everything was fine until my father-in-law gave me this book. He gave me Healing the Inner Child by Thich Nhat Hanh.
mm,
And I remember him handing that book to me. I was like, oh, I had a fine childhood. Nothing was wrong.
right. So from the
Little did I know.
right. So from the age
Yeah.
of 7 until how old were you when you got
I
that
think I
book?
was probably 35.
Right. So from 7 to 35, you're just living a normal life, like on the outside, but inside there was something you were not necessarily aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So when he gifted me this book, I didn't read it right away. It took me like maybe a month or two.
Okay.
Then when I first, reading the first chapter, I was like, "Oh, wow. Oh, this is." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, like there's so many things that I connect with." I was like, "Oh, there's a lot of things that I didn't know about myself."
Mm.
The awareness of like, "Oh, I was hiding my pain."
Yeah.
And what hiding my pain was that I had a lot of anger issue.
Yes.
I was angry. And Dr. Gabamate has this a quote about like if we don't heal childhood trauma, it shows up in the relationship. And what
Mm.
showed up in my relationship was anger. You know, it kept coming up in my relationship. I had this anger issue. I was like a ticking time bomb. Like
Uh,
I got triggered easily. I hurt people unconsciously. I never thought about where was this anger coming from.
yeah.
It took me years to really uncover this anger. Well, I didn't discover that anger until I did somatic breath work. And when I did somatic breath work, there was this rage, right? In this during
Mm.
the breath work,
Yeah.
I started like I was mad. I was I wasn't able to because from the outside, I played the nice girl. I was always nice.
Yeah.
And usually nice girls have, unhealthy anger that hasn't been resolved.
Right. Yeah.
Like there was no way to release this anger in a healthy way. So doing the somatic breath work, when you're in the breath work, you don't think about like, oh, where's this anger coming from or nothing. Like you're in the moment, right?
Mm.
Because the emotion, the energy in motion.
Right.
So the rage came up. I was so mad. I was screaming. I was pounding my fist in the breath work.
Yeah.
I was able to release this anger and rage out of me
Mm.
that I never knew that I even could even let out.
Mm-hmm.
It was so powerful because I was like, oh, this is how we release anger in a healthy way,
Right.
release rage in a healthy way without hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's feeling your emotion and just letting you scream and cry and shout.
Right. Punch if you want to.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
punch, like whatever in a moment that like whatever you're doing in that moment. So I was able to release this, and then I end up like shouting and screaming to just sobbing, like crying, like I was in deep sadness.
Mm.
And in this deep sadness, I realized I never grieved my father's death.
Yeah.
So it came down to I was holding this anger since 7 years old,
Yeah.
and it affected my relationships until I released it in this healthy way. I was like, it was like this heaviness released out of my body.
Yeah.
And it was a profound experience because I'm like, wow. I woke up like after that breath work, I was like, I'm a new person. Like I felt like brand new, like somebody else, so
Mm-hmm.
light. And
Right.
that's when I noticed that, okay, this is the work that I have to learn. This is the work
Mm.
that I have to do.
Right.
And that's how I got into somatic breath work.
Okay. So the first thing, or one of the first things, was getting the book. And
Hmm.
then that led you to other things that led to the somatic work, or was it from the book to the somatic work?
Oh, no, no. It was from the book. And then I had to do my own healing, so I did a lot of journaling. So the first letter I wrote to the man that killed my father, it was like 10 pages.
Mm.
Then I was like, no, 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 this is not for him. It was for me to
Yeah.
actually write down the experience of what had happened that I knew about, like in that period.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was a great outlet for me to just journal out my thoughts and feelings onto paper.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read any books to like, oh, you should take this step, that step, this step. There was no step that I knew. It was just the instinct of your intuition, like, oh, I need to journal. I need to write to this man.
Mm-hmm.
And writing to the man, it was for myself. I had to journal it out. Then
Right.
after that, I got into doing Thich Nhat Hanh's meditation.
Yeah.
And I sat there for months. I remember like at least 3 solid months every single day, 20 to an hour of meditation.
Wow.
And I was just sobbing, crying, releasing so much stuff.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's almost like when you begin to tap into your emotions, it starts to guide you. Oh, write this letter or journal this way, or it's almost like you uncover this inner compass that has been
Yes.
covered up. Mm.
Yeah. And I think we all have that instinct and power within us. You know, Sometimes our life is leading us to where we want to go. You just know, like, when you're ready for the next step in life or the next journey in life, it opens the door for you if you're willing to enter it. If you are courageous to take that first step and go for it.
Mm.
Because for me, the first step was, oh, how do I find this man that killed my dad? I looked online and I found what prison he was at.
Yeah.
And then that's when that journey, I was like, okay, I'm going to write to this man.
Yeah. And then he wrote back to you.
Well, I guess the prison kept my letter for, I think, 2 months.
Yeah.
Because I know that they like read your letters before they give it to him. So they probably read my letter and probably, I don't know, took 2 months to whoever read it, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
before he got it. And when he got my letter, he opened and read the first sentence like, "Hi, I told him my Cambodian name because I didn't want to tell him my real name.
Mm.
So I was like, "Hi, my name is Mion. Mion is the Cambodian name.
Yeah.
I'm the daughter of the man you shot and killed." And he just closed that letter up. I was
Yeah.
walking back and forth in his cell, just like in disbelief, like out of all these years, like
Mm.
she's writing me. You know, he was in disbelief.
Yeah.
So he did. I think he said it took him like a couple days before he actually opened and read my letter.
Wow.
Yeah. And before I wrote to him, there was books about him.
Interesting.
Yes. So I ordered the book was called The Dream Shattered. It's about how Asian Games formed. And this man that wrote the book was like the counselor for the CYA. Is it CYA? The California Youth,
Mm.
the prison or
Okay.
so he was counselor for all the youths
Yeah.
in the jail there.
Right.
So he was using Bob, I'll call him Bob,
Okay.
as about how he came to America in a war-torn country
Mm.
and they formed gangs to protect each other from other gangs.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of trauma already that he had before he came to America.
Right.
So understanding his background and
Mm.
what he's been through, and it comes down to like compassion and understanding.
Wow.
But that takes time because I was 7 until 35, 36 is when I did the
Yeah.
work.
Right.
So it wasn't like, you can't forgive somebody in a year or something. Like, like you can't like, oh, I'm going to forgive this man. No, it took me how long?
Yeah. So I have an interesting question.
Yeah.
If that man was still out and potentially killing other people, would the process of forgiving him look differently?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because the abuse or the trauma is continuing. It hasn't stopped yet. Like, justice hasn't been prevailed or hasn't been accomplished yet.
Yeah. I think it would have been different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. And then when you remove that anger, when you let it, underneath it was sadness and grief. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Deep sadness.
deep sadness.
Very deep. Yeah. Sadness
Yeah.
that I didn't even know I even had,
Right. Yeah.
until you tap into your own body. Your body holds everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are or how many years has gone by, it
Mm-hmm.
still holds it.
Right. I wonder if there's anything else underneath that sadness. What I know is that anger usually, or at least what I think, is anger usually is covering up fear, sadness, I don't know what else. But it's just so interesting that when we go inwards, we keep following the trail and we keep discovering things.
Yeah.
It's almost like it has no end. When you remove that anger, you felt so light and new. And then probably when you began to feel that sadness, you began to feel lighter and more new. And then maybe something else, like the growth is never ending from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I just say that it's energy in motion is moving through sadness, through grief, and then it transformed. The energy transformed into something more beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I'm actually curious that when you had that burst of anger, was it the first session of somatic work or was it a few months in?
It was the second session.
Okay.
Yeah, because the first time I did somatic breathwork, I was like, I was still in my head, you know?
Mm.
Because when you're doing somatic, it's the body. You got to tune into the body.
Yeah.
To me, I was like skeptical. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like breathing? Like, this is stupid. Like, too much in my head. I couldn't connect with my body until the second time I did it, where I was like, okay, I know kind of what to expect. I like be an open book.
Mm.
And that's when I got into the breath and into my body, and I just cracked open.
Right. That's really cool. And I bet it's so common that in everything, we don't become masters from day one. We have to persevere a little bit and work through the doubt and skepticism. So then you spent some time doing that work. And after some time, you decided, okay, I can help others as well.
Yes, because I was wanted to help people, but I didn't have a way. Like as Evan Carmichael was like, how did you do it? I was like, I did, I read books, I journaled, I meditate,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have the skills to like, help them tune into their body.
Yeah.
And then when I did somatic breath work, was like, whoa, this is it here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, meditation was really what opened me up to breath work.
Okay. Right. Right. And there's also a saying, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And right now we have this wonderful story, and it's kind of like concise. So it was meditation, journaling, and breath work. But I'm sure at the time it wasn't as clear and concise. There was maybe some frustration or like trying different things, like, oh, this is not working, this is not working. Have you explored other avenues that weren't as efficient for you?
Let's see. I can't think of different avenues. I know like I tried like NLP, but I didn't really fully like commit to it. I did some tapping and yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. And you found that the most efficient was the meditation, the journaling, and the breath work.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So now, if somebody wants to work with you, what is it that, well, what is it that they're struggling with? How do they know I need breath work? Obviously, if somebody's hearing your story, they may have clues. But what else can you say to make it more clear for someone?
I think I wouldn't say like you need breath work. I would say that people that really come to me is when they're in their healing journey, when they're ready to like open up to discover more who you are. Sometimes it could be a loss, you know. When you lose someone, it's another growth, another time to like open up and grow again. So it's like if you're grieving, if you're in your healing journey and want to know yourself more, sometimes it's like you feel like there's something in you, like your heart is just like, some people can feel numb
Mm,
and they want to explore like their heart to like, they want to feel again.
yeah.
Sometimes it's just if you're just ready for growth, I guess. I mean, there's all types of people that come to breath work,
Yeah.
and it's more like your own healing journey
Right.
because it's not for everyone. I can't like ask my brother, hey, you want to do breath work? If
Yeah.
he's not ready to grow and heal, he's not ready for this.
Yeah.
You have to be open-minded to doing breath work because it's just
It,
like you can't force somebody to grow or heal.
right. It's almost like you cannot force somebody to be vulnerable. This willingness to become vulnerable has to come from within. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That makes so much sense. That's cool. And then when people usually do breath work, does it become like a lifetime, like a part of their lifestyle now? It's kind of like they heal whatever was in the past and then they do maintenance work? Or is it more like, oh, I just did this and I'll just move on with life? What does it kind of look like?
It depends. It's different for everyone. As for me, I can say that it's an ongoing practice. I still do somatic breath work. It's sometimes life happens, right? The stress, the just everyday life happens, and we feel it in our body. If you are in tune with yourself, you can feel like, oh, I just feel sluggish. I just feel like there's something like holding me down. And I would just call another friend that does somatic breath work too.
Mm,
And, she guides me through another session. So
right.
to me, is being able to like, the hardest part is making the time to sit down and breathe and be in your own body.
Mm,
People do not like that feeling. It's so uncomfortable. Who wants
right.
to do that?
Right.
Like, I don't want to feel uncomfortable and just like,
Yeah.
they'd rather just turn on the TV and watch TV instead and bypass their feelings
Right.
until it
Right.
comes up again.
Yeah. So, what is an encouragement or a tip for someone that is just on the border? Like they have been distracting themselves for the longest time and they just want to put their toe in the water.
I would say is to connect with themselves. And that's kind of hard because if you don't know how to connect with yourself, like how do you do it? I would say listen to podcasts or YouTubes, describe like what is it that you're feeling right now?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know how you are feeling, it's hard to work with just like, oh, I don't know what I'm feeling. Like, I don't know. Then it's hard to help someone if they don't know. And to me, is asking more questions,
Mm.
diving a little deeper. Like where is it in your body that you're feeling a little tightness?
Yeah.
Sometimes like you said, the throat, and for me, it was a lot of my throat and my chest. Some
Mm.
people is their stomach.
Yeah.
They get this uncomfortable feeling of their like, oh,
Right.
for me was my heart was tight and my throat was tight and my heart was just like rock hard. Like I didn't feel anything.
Right. I've experienced that heart being rock hard, and then it dissolves little by little as I go more inward.
Yeah. And
Right.
how do you go inward? Because everybody has a different
To me, I found that
ways.
one of the keys is to just assure myself that it's safe to go inward.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's safe to just whatever surprises happen. If it's anger, it's safe. If it's sadness, it's safe. If it's hurt, it's safe. To me, that was a key.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can't heal if you're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
Being safe is like one of the important steps in healing.
Right. And like you mentioned, so when you were 7, your mom was grieving, people were surrounding her and supporting her, but it was not necessarily your kind of environment. Maybe it didn't feel safe to you on some level
Mm.
or not. And then you went into that room, you grabbed your dad's pillow, and that sense of the door closed, maybe that was kind of like, okay, I'm safe to cry, I'm safe to grieve for that moment. And then later on, it seems that when you were in that breathwork session, it was obviously a safe space. And the first session, the skeptic mind was carrying the environment it was used to for all the years. And it was running, running, running. And then the second session, I was like, oh, it was safe last time. Maybe this skeptic mind can relax a little bit. And then the volcano erupted.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I love how you connect that together there. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
That's really cool. And then obviously, like right now, you mentioned like in relationships you were triggered, this anger was triggered out of nowhere. How did your relationship change now? Like, I'm pretty sure it's not even that you're different, but you're providing safety for others too, or some sort of different environment.
Yes. So I see anger so differently. When I see anger, I'm like, "Ooh, there's something underneath it." Like I'm not scared of anger. I love holding space for people to be in rage and in anger. Like it does not make me feel uncomfortable anymore.
Mm,
And holding a session for someone in anger and rage, like I let them be. Like let's
yeah.
scream at that pillow. Let's hit that pillow. Like work it out. Let's move your body. Like get that energy moving and out.
Okay. I like that a lot. So, a lot of people, and maybe me included in the past, I would, if I'm feeling angry, I'd go to the gym and lift weights. But it's tricky. Am I feeling the emotions or am I suppressing the emotions? Here's what I notice. Maybe the anger doesn't go away. So let's say something happened, a coworker did something, and I go to the gym and I'm feeling angry and I let it out, or I let it out. I don't know which one it is, if it's genuine or not. And then the next week, I remember what happened and I go to the gym again to let it out. Whereas if I'm doing somatic work with you, I'm pretty sure I'll let it out once, and then the next time I'll be letting out something else, or maybe another portion of it. How can people discern the difference so they can kind of lean into more of processing, like legit processing and legit feeling, rather than just like maybe inefficient way of letting out anger? Would you have advice for that or tips?
So let me ask you this. So when you go in the gym and you're stressed out or something's triggered you
Yeah,
and you lift weights,
right.
you are moving emotions, but are you feeling what is coming up for you when you're lifting weights?
I'm just feeling the first layer, but not
And what is the
deeply.
first layer?
The first layer could be anger, I would say. But if underneath it it's sadness or hurt, I'm not feeling that in the gym.
No, you're
Right.
not.
Yeah.
So when you do somatic breath work, you go a little deeper because you have the space
Right.
there to actually be in your body. You're going an inwards journey,
Mm-hmm.
while you're at the gym is more you're awake is outside.
Yes. Yes.
So when you go in somatic breath work, you're tuning inward. So you're going deeper into what's underneath this
Mm.
anger. You have space to process and to let your own wisdom give you the answers.
Yes.
To me, I'm just guiding you, but we all have our own wisdom that
Yeah.
is leading the way, that is guiding us. That is just more powerful when you figure out your own answers yourself
That's right.
versus somebody tell you, oh, you do this, and this. Like, it's not going to resonate with you until you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And the wisdom within your own self tells you.
Yes.
And it's just a shift.
Right. That makes so much sense. And it's almost like you said outward. The anger is outward, and being at the gym is outward. And dare I say that anger is more like a masculine thing. It's outward, and I can do it in the gym. But if I'm gonna feel the sadness, it's very feminine. It's like the yin and the yang. And if
Yes.
somebody is stuck in the masculine and doesn't yet have the ability to soften and be more vulnerable, then they're gonna be stuck in the anger, and the anger is gonna be regenerated every day when they go to the gym, potentially, because the sadness, the source, is still there. So as they go deeper, it dissolves, and then they can go to the gym and work out in a more healthier mindset, potentially.
Oh, yes. Beautiful. You said that beautifully.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, let me ask you this. If you think back to your 7-year-old Rose, what advice would you give her?
Oof. That's a very great question. Oof. All I would give to my 7-year-old self is to trust yourself,
Trust yourself.
to trust yourself that life is always guiding you to where you need to be, and to trust your intuition,
Mm,
and that life is always working out for us. Is always working out for us.
yeah.
I don't need to, Rose 7-year-old self, do not stop playing. Do not stop being playful. Just keep playing.
Mm, wow.
Do not lose that little girl in you that's creative.
Right.
Tap into her.
Mm-hmm.
That's where life is more fun when you're more playful versus, being serious all the time.
Yeah. That is so amazing. If you were to leave the world 5% better, what would you like to change?
I think the 5% will is to be okay, is to learn to that everyone dies. Our life, like, we wake up every day and we are closer to death than we can imagine.
Mm,
And learning to grieve death, learning to, how would you want to die? I will make this place a better place if we can learn that death is a graduation of life,
mm,
to be okay with death, to use death in a meaningful way, to use death as like a motivation for how would you live your life if
wow.
you knew that you're going to die tomorrow? Who is there that you need to forgive? Who is there that maybe you don't want to forgive them? Okay, that's okay, because we
Mm,
all are living our own lives. But how do you want to die? How do you want the people that you leave behind, like, what legacy are you leaving behind?
mm,
How do you want to show up today to the people that you love?
Yeah.
And the more that we're able to talk about death, it makes it easier for the people that we leave behind to grieve a better grievance. I don't know if that even makes sense, but to it makes grieving more meaningful. It makes it more easier. Not
Yeah.
easier, because grieving is never easy,
Mm.
but just to have that transition of like, oh, mom, want us to, you know, play this funky song, and dance or like whatever, like just whew. Have you ever thought about your death and how would you plan your own funeral?
I did, but it has been a while since I thought about that. I actually told my mom, if I die before you, I don't want people crying and screaming. I don't want them to wear black. And then I do it sparingly, but I just meditate on death. Right.
Yes.
I think I learned it even from samurai warriors. I think they would meditate on death, and this way they just live in a calm way. Because if death is one of the biggest fears, and you meditate on it, you sit with it, it unravels a lot of things. And it's like, oh, okay. I'm okay with death now, I guess. I've been sitting with it for quite some time. But the way you reframe it is huge for me because instead of thinking death is this end kind of dark thing, which my default would go to, it's now, oh, it's a graduation. It's almost like a door to more light and more life. And then instead of asking questions, how do I want to live? How do I want to die? That's meaningful. That hits powerfully. And then using death as it's getting closer as a motivation. Like, I don't need to be casual about the things that I want to do in life and the way I want to die. I want to take it seriously. I want to get up and get on it and just crush it. It's so motivating if I think that way. So, what a reframe.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's just like we shouldn't be scared of death. Just
yeah.
because like our life is always showing us like what do we need to do next. And for me as right now, my life what is showing me is like, oh, I'm like going to another way to going to like hospice and learning from the counselor about the grief, going into grief counseling, grief support group to help people learn to process grief, to hold space for the grieving people. And there is something so beautiful knowing that when we all die, our personality is involved in how we die. So I was listening to this book about hospice. She's a nurse. And if you are an introvert and you have like 6 months to live, some of them, the introverts, they wait till all their family comes see them. And then when the family leaves, that's when they choose to die. Then you got the
Hmm.
extroverts where more social and they choose to die when all the members are there.
Wow.
So your personality plays a role into how you die.
Yeah.
And now to come to think about my father was dramatic as in he was an actor. He did comedy. He was a leader. So he chose to die by, a dramatic way, by him getting shot
Hmm.
and killed. And it's
Yeah.
so him when I think about it.
Wow.
You know, I can't say this like, if my dad just died recently, but it's been years now. So I can look back and be like, that's how he chose to die.
Yeah.
So, this is just what I think. But I think that when we come here to be on this planet Earth,
Mm-hmm.
we choose how we go.
Wow. That is so powerful. I did not know there was a book written on that.
Yeah.
I did hear glimpses from different philosophies on things like that. Those who live by the sword died by the sword. I heard Bob Proctor talking about we don't die, we kill ourselves by the thoughts that we think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been studying Think and Grow Rich, and actually, I just made a video about it. And whatever we saturate our minds with, the thoughts, we just attract it, whatever it is. So even death, our thoughts will attract the way we go out, the
Yeah.
style in which we choose to go out. That is so amazing. So my last question for you, and then I'll ask you how people can find you and stuff like that. If you were to give advice to your 20-year-old or 25-year-old, what would you give her?
Ooh, that is a great question. So, what I would give my 20 to 25 is that you don't know who you really are yet. To keep exploring, to figure out what you want to do. To not let, like, okay, you should go to school, get your degree, and be this field of job. Figure out, like, what is it that you want to do? Go explore. Go see what you like to do. Go give it a try. I would tell her to go travel, go explore. I would just tell her to not give up, to always have hope, and to just play.
Play. Same
Play.
advice to the 7-year-old.
Yeah. Keep playing, because we sometimes we lose that playfulness because life
Yeah,
gets, stressed out and life happens.
right.
And when we stop playing, we stop creating.
Mm,
So I would just say keep finding that inner child and play with her.
right.
What is it that she wants to bring out to this world?
That's right. That is so beautiful. I like how I see the growth from the advice to the 7-year-old to the 2025. So the 7 is trust yourself, tap into that playfulness, and then as life changes, as we grow to 2025, keep that playfulness and go for what you want, which is kind of like trust yourself, right? It's just more like outwardly. I think that's really amazing. So, with that being said, Rose, first, I want to thank you so much. I've been intending to do this for a while, and I think the stars aligned, and I think so many people will be blessed with the love and knowledge that you shared. Truly. And I would like for you now to share with people where can they find you, and if you have any departing words to leave them with, I'll let you end it as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So you can find me on Instagram, the Rosie Rose. I do online breathworks. I have local workshops or classes in town here in Eureka, California. And if you ever need support, hit me up. Hit me up. So I want to end with why I'm telling you all of this is that you have to feel it. You have to feel it to heal it. We all carry, pain from the past, stress, overwhelm with life, but you don't have to carry it. You don't have to carry it anymore. Like, there's a way to release it. So I'll end with, like, if you don't express yourself, you're going to end up suppressing yourself. Then you end up repress, then depress, and it ends up in dis-ease. So go out there and express your playfulness, your creativity, what you want to do. Because when you don't do that, we're just making a hole for ourselves. So
Yeah.
you got to feel it to heal it.